but if we had a Bitcoin world where people had their own money and our own economies were prospering, if the economy wasn't just hijacked by corrupt politicians, etc., it would be a very different world. And I think that's the world where we wouldn't really care about borders. We would just be focused on building each other up. That would build our communities up and eventually all different countries up in their own different way. So that's why I'm super hopeful for Bitcoin. I do think Bitcoin fixes this.
Welcome to the Tucson Bitcoin podcast. My name is Alex, and today my guest is Camila Campton. And this was a really fun conversation. We got into a bunch of different things like Bitcoin in South America, Bitcoin for immigrants, stuff with what's going on in El Salvador. And it's awesome. She's the social media manager over at Swan Bitcoin, and she's doing a fantastic job because you see Swan everywhere. And Swan's a company I really enjoy. I've had a bunch of people from the company on the podcast, and I love referring people over there because there's no shit coins, there's no nonsense, there's no scammery going on, and they're people that really understand Bitcoin and want to see it succeed and are not just opportunists getting into the space. And I love that. I absolutely love that about the company. I feel good when I refer people over there. But yeah, she also just started a podcast called Bitcoin in Espanol, and it's awesome. I've been wanting a good Bitcoin podcast. I know her co-host has a great one called Satoshi in Venezuela that he's been doing for a while. But yeah, I really wanted a solid Bitcoin podcast, and I was looking, for people to start it because I don't speak Spanish, and they went and did it. And so now I have a podcast to shill to Spanish speakers, in my area. And that's super, super exciting to me. Just to, it's another thing moving in the direction of helping people adopt the hardest money ever created, money that promotes freedom and sovereignty rather than money that incentivizes exploitation and extraction of wealth from the people that are most vulnerable. And we talked about that, of like, why is South America, in the place that it is? It's a resource-rich area, and a lot of it comes down to government corruption. And she did a really good job of, outlining that, of what's going on in Colombia, what's going on in Mexico, in all these different countries, why it's so difficult for people to be successful there and why they seek to come to the United States. And she's got a really cool story as an immigrant coming to the United States, which I really appreciate, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Awesome. Well, good to have you on, Camila. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, Alex, for having me. I know we've been planning this for a couple of weeks, so it's good to finally be able to be on with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the timing is perfect because you guys just launched your Spanish podcast, and that is something I'm extremely excited. I don't speak Spanish. I can barely understand it. I should put more effort into that, but I was looking for people to start a Spanish speaking podcast so we can reach some more people in my area, and you guys did it. And so now I have a Spanish speaking podcast to show.
That's awesome. Yeah, even though we've just had our first episode, and it was a pretty funny one, we're still super excited to keep working on it. And we've actually had this in the back burner for a little while, because Javier and I are two of the fluent Spanish-speaking people on the Swan team. And so we were like, yeah, this would be a really good idea, especially since we kind of created a small community on Clubhouse, the app, the voice app. We started that there. And then people kept messaging us and being like, hey, you guys should start something that's recorded so that people can actually go back to and listen to these really important discussions. So super glad that we were able to finally launch it. And yeah, he's more of an expert than I am. So I respect Javier a lot. He has his own podcast currently also, Satoshi in Venezuela. But I'm really excited to just grow, learn, and like you said, just help Spanish speakers have better information about Bitcoin and Bitcoin only education.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's such a big thing. Like when El Salvador made their big Bitcoin announcement, I was kind of skeptical because I thought they might, be like a lot of other countries and politicians and want to bring shit coins down. And I think that's still a possibility. Um, and it's just really
You
interesting.
know, yeah, what's also amazing is someone from Guatemala sent me a news article yesterday about an opinion piece in a newspaper. They were talking about Bitcoin, and he said, please look at what they said about the other coins. And they literally used the word shitcoin in their article and kind of explain like what shitcoins are. And it's like, well, if this is on a newspaper and people are going to read it, this is a type of education so that people can have and they know how to differentiate from the get-go that Bitcoin is its own thing and that shitcoins are something completely different. Like there's just no comparison. So glad to see that that message is being pushed to these Latin American countries when they're trying to make really big strides in Bitcoin.
Yeah. Do you think that people in Latin American countries are a little bit more skeptical of things like Bitcoin and the crypto space?
I think so. And I say that because of my family personally. So I have family that's in Colombia. And when I got into Bitcoin, I started to talk to them about it. But there's really no like interest, really. Some of them think it's a pyramid scheme or that it's like not legit whatsoever. And I mean, it's because the Latin American people have been taken advantage of a lot, I would say, not only from like foreign people, but also their own people. So it's kind of hard to like trust something from the get-go, which is why education is super important, because if we're able to educate them and kind of tell them, then they can start doing their own research and make up their minds on their own. But when you have a country like El Salvador that is pushing for this like legislation for it to be legal tender, then that's a completely different kind of pace where you want to learn as fast as you can, because it's definitely going to affect the people of El Salvador and very quickly.
Yeah, that's huge. I had Mike Peterson on the podcast about like 3 months ago, and that was when he was telling me about how Jack Mallers was going to go down there with Strike. And there was no, I was asking him about the El Salvadorian government and their view on and stance on Bitcoin, and there was not. He said they kind of like are interested in it, but not really, super like excited about it or understanding of it. And it's amazing how quickly things shifted. It's just wild to
Yeah,
me.
and the fact that these people in their government putting laser eyes on, right? And then discussing like what the law is going to be and stuff. It's like they've kind of done their own research, which is great. They're not just talking out of their butt when it comes to Bitcoin. They have some knowledge, and that's great. But now it's like, how do we get that towards the people, that the citizens, the regular people that are busting their butts out there in the sun every single day, the ones that don't have many opportunities. Like, how do we translate that knowledge to them? Because those are the people that really matter, right? Like, politicians can create their own stories when it comes to Bitcoin so that they can sound much better than the opposing party that they're working with, right? Like, they can dress their lingo to sound super smart, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like the people that are really going to benefit are the people, the citizens, the everyday person, not just for political votes. That's what we need to kind of remember, that yes, let's applaud these people for making these steps and kind of like putting Bitcoin on the map globally, but let's not get stuck there, and let's see how we can put our boots on the ground to help it actually succeed in such little time.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Something that I learned last week was that people immigrating in the United States do not have access to financial services in the same way that natural born citizens do, like with lending services and um, like if they want to buy a car, they're not able to get a loan or buy a house, or start a business. And there's some creative ways that different communities of immigrants work to like pool their money to help support each other, which I thought was pretty fascinating up in Phoenix. Um, but yeah, you're an immigrant. What was that experience kind of like dealing with the financial system?
So it's super interesting. I came to this country when I was 6 years old. And the funny part about it is that I had no idea I was staying. The only reason why I came was because my mom had taken that step to kind of like come here for a better future, etc. And when I came here, I thought I was just gonna see her. But as a 6 year old, you're not really thinking about like 10 years down the line, right? I was just excited to be back with my mom. Um, and so that process was a difficult process because for us to get our residency and to actually get a green card, it took us 10 years. And so it was a lot of just like, don't tell anyone because you never know who's listening and you can get deported if you do. Just stay very low and quiet. Try to figure out how to get a license for you to be able to drive, at least for my parents. Fortunately, my dad, he he's the one that petitioned us, so he had his green card and stuff and could work. But it was always like that, trying to get 2 to 3 jobs in order to make ends meet, because when people from Latin American countries come here, and even if they have a college education, it's not valid here. They would have to go through like a whole process in order to get the license or diploma validated here for them to get a professional job. And then you had the issues with language, so like actually learning English. So my dad learned English through his coworkers and by listening to the radio. It wasn't the perfect English, but he was able to get by. So just from the get-go, like the it's hard to start from the ground up when you have so many limitations and you don't have the freedoms that everyone does, right? Um, so in terms of the financial system stuff, yeah, I mean, my mom would work. She wasn't documented, so it was like trying to find someone that would hire her, even though she didn't have permission to work, and just trying to save up as much money as possible for the future and for what could be, and hopefully always having that hope that one day we're going to be able to have a green card, one day we're going to be able to have citizens and have all of the benefits that Americans do. It's just going to take time and a lot of hard work. So after that, you are able to see the contrast of how your life changes so drastically when you have more access to the financial system here. Like you said, it's easier to get loans. It's easier for you to start building your credit. It's easier for you to apply to get a house, et cetera, et cetera. So it was definitely challenging at the beginning as an immigrant to kind of like have the patience to go through all of those hoops to be able to access that American dream that you really want. But then obviously when you stumble onto Bitcoin and you realize what's money, it's like, crap, all of that hard work from all of these years, like our money is evaporating essentially if we keep it in a bank account and stuff. So the next step is kind of like seeing what other opportunities are there for us. Like we can talk about investments now. That was never really a conversation that we had before. We can talk about Bitcoin now, which I orange pilled my parents, and that makes me super proud because it's like, okay, let's try to rescue all of that time, all of those years of hard work that they put in, and not let it just go downhill with everything that's happening in our economy. So I forgot the question, what it was, but that's just kind of like a little bit of the story. And that's my story, but I feel like that's a story for a lot of other immigrants that come to this country, like the struggles that they go through just to get by and just to kind of like protect their family. And they don't have big dreams of like becoming rich one day or whatever. It's just, how can I take care of my own people?
Yeah, one of the things that I find very, very interesting about people immigrating into the United States, and that includes people that are coming illegally, is the difference of time preference that people coming here have. Of like, I had a guy on the podcast last week, whose grandfather came in and was working just like really rough, inexpensive jobs, and he had this idea of like, I want to create a better future, for my kids and grandkids, and I'm gonna immigrate and do these things, not to get rich quick or have a more stable life, but to create an environment where they can, experience a much more safe or stable life. And I thought that was pretty incredible, contrasted against, a lot of natural born citizens that are, doing all sorts of silly things and not thinking about that. And then the numbers don't lie. When you look at immigrants and entrepreneurial nature, like, immigrants are much more likely to be business owners, and I think that's great, for our economy. But yeah, I went
It's
down.
just crazy. I'm sorry, just want to add real quick. I think the difference between native borns and people that come and emigrate are that when you're born here, you usually have it a lot better than people down there, right? With better opportunities. Like, honestly, I truly believe that the United States is the best country in the world. Like, the fact that my mom came here and we were able to do all of that sacrifice, I'm the happiest I could ever be. I don't really see myself living somewhere else. Maybe that can change in the future, but I I freaking love this country. But I think the difference between being born here and then coming is that the people are hungry. Like, and not just in terms of like physically hungry, but they're just hungry for a change. They're hungry for that opportunity to have something more. They're hungry for the opportunity to, it doesn't matter if you start washing dishes somewhere or, becoming a farmer, working under the sun. Like, it doesn't matter. Like you said, there's the vision of like, this is not only for me, but this is for the people that I still have back at home, because a lot of people also come here so that they can send money over so that they have a better lifestyle. And it's also for what I'm going to be building here in America, my family, my kids, my grandkids. Is we're hungry and we see the opportunity and we take it, and we're not going to take it for granted. That's for sure. We shouldn't take it for granted, even if we were born here or not. No one should take the opportunities that this country offers for granted.
Yeah, 100%. I think part of the reason why a lot of people born in the United States take it for granted is that they have not been outside of the United States and seen, how different, all these different cultures and governments and, communities around the world are. And it's, really unfortunate. And I think also, like, the topic of immigration is really a tough one. It's a politically charged one. And a lot of people
Hmm.
are having it from, a million miles away, of not, having met people. Like, I used to work on a ranch, and we would deal with people pretty regularly right down on the border, that were coming across, that had walked all the way from, Guatemala, and all these other countries. And, when you're standing there talking to a human being, and hearing a little bit about their experience, and I mean, the desert's just so brutal out there. It's so awful. I went down to the border, like right to the edge of the border wall yesterday, um, in the middle of nowhere. We had Mexican cell service instead of American cell service. That's like how close we were. And
That's hilarious.
um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's unfortunate, just the way that this political discourse is right now. Um, and I mean, I personally don't really believe in borders. I think they're rather silly, And when I see that wall, it worries me, not just because, of its impact on, like the local tribes that are on the border, um, all the create, its impacts on wildlife, stuff like that. But like when I see a wall go up like that, I was like, is that to keep people out, or is that eventually going to be used to keep people in? And that's concerning.
That's a Yeah, that's a really good observation. And coming down on the Bitcoin rabbit hole, it was like the first time that struck me that, you know, these people shouldn't be leaving their countries because they don't have the opportunities in their own countries. Every country should have their own opportunities. The corruption in politics and in money and stuff, like, it's it makes communities break apart, right? Because, I still have a huge chunk of my family in Colombia and I only get to see them once in a while. That was a sacrifice that we had to make. So it rips families apart, it rips community apart. If my mom would have seen that there was an opportunity for us in Colombia, we wouldn't have left. I probably would have still been there, still thriving and stuff, I'm sure. But it just it comes down to that. Like, the fiat system is so corrupt. Like, none of these things have changed, and people are desperate. You have to be really desperate in order to leave your family
Mhm.
or your own language, your own customs and stuff. Like, it doesn't come like, oh, one day I woke up and I just really want to go to the USA and go through all of this trouble, blah, blah, blah. No, like, it comes from a state of desperation and of survival. Like, your survival instincts kick in. So, but if we had a Bitcoin world where people had their own money and our own economies were prospering, it, the economy wasn't just hijacked by corrupt politicians, etc., it would be a very different world. And I think that's the world where we wouldn't really care about borders. We would just be focused on building each other up. That would build our communities up and eventually all different countries up in their own different way. So that's why I'm super hopeful for Bitcoin. I do think Bitcoin fixes this in some way.
Absolutely, it's huge. Yeah, I think a lot of people, like, when they think about South America, specifically Colombia, they think of drugs. They think of the cocaine, uh, which does is a huge part of the country, and the corruption. But they don't think about the economic circumstances of inflation, like Argentina. A lot of people don't know about inflation in Argentina. They don't know about all the meddling in from larger Western countries like the United States going in and extracting a bunch of resources and with oil and different mining stuff like that. They don't think about I think South America has some of the largest or highest corporate tax rates, which makes it prohibitively expensive for smaller businesses to start. And then as far as, like, I know this is a thing in Mexico, it's very difficult to go out and start a business because you need to know people and essentially get permission from the oligarchy running it. um, I think a lot of that plays into why there's lack of opportunity, like you're saying, the corruption of the fiat system. But yeah, specifically in Colombia, why do you think there's lack of opportunity in general?
Um, we're getting into spicy stuff. No, but this is good. I just think Colombia has been known, at least for its politicians, to be very corrupt. So, I mean, every politician in some way, a government, let's say, is corrupt in their own way in every country, right? This is just like from personal experience. Um, just like taking advantage of the most vulnerable people. So politics, let's say, and I haven't talked about this in a podcast before. I had a conversation with someone this weekend, but this is kind of like again, when I talk is from personal experience. So this is just like me saying what I've seen, right? Anyone can come and debate me on this stuff, but I talk from personal stories, not just, and this is why I just want to put it out there. This is just my opinion. But we've seen that if you know the right person and you owe them favors and stuff, like, you will get pulled out of nowhere to be in these very important positions. So I know of people, uh, you would think that a senator has like great education, is a lawyer of some sort, right? That has like the qualifications in order to be able to run a country. They falsify documents in order to look like they qualify for these positions. They get on top of these positions and then they extract as much as they can from it. So you have campaigns that are going to the most vulnerable, saying, hey, if you vote for me, I will give you money, like right now. If I give you money right now, promise that you'll vote for me. And they'll do it because these are very poor people that are really hungry, and this is in the physical sense now, are really hungry, want to survive, and they'll take it. And so I just feel like that system in itself is really corrupt. And in countries like Colombia, you mentioned the thing about drugs, especially when it comes to youth, is like the only way you can really get ahead, especially if you're in a lot of poverty. These people can only get out of there, one, if they become amazing soccer players and hopefully become international superstars, or two, they're going to start joining gangs. in order to be able to get money and provide for their family and for themselves. And then that feeds into the loop of more corruption, more drugs coming in, because now you have like this distribution network of all of these young people that are just trying to figure out how to survive, which is really sad. And I think that's where the corruption stems from, the people on the top, where you have to know them in order to be able to move up. If you don't know anyone, you're just kind of stuck in the middle. Like there's no way for you to get out of there. And I think what's super sad is that countries like Colombia, there's so much innovation. They're really smart people, innovative people, entrepreneurs, like you say, but it's how are they going to get these ideas out there? The only way is for you to get money from X entities that probably come from corruption and from a different type of power. Other ways, the only way you can make it is probably you leaving the country and trying somewhere else. So that's kind of how it works, at least what I've seen.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And we're starting to see this pick up a lot more. I think as a result of the internet and how the internet doesn't have borders. It's an idea that's talked about in the sovereign individual of jurisdictional arbitrage of people moving to where there's freedom and opportunity. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I mean, it's going to be really interesting. And I'm still a little bit wary of what's going on in El Salvador because, the second that they did that, you've got, these big power brokers like the IMF and the State Department reaching out to them, which is super, concerning to me. But I think we're going to see that happen where we could see a massive shift back down to South Central America of people bringing industry and innovation down there out of the U.S. if we don't, uh, have a good response to all the innovation going on, which I'm pretty.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
that's
pretty.
the game theory.
Yeah.
Like that's the game theory. It's if America's not going to be fast in accepting Bitcoin, the people that understand Bitcoin here are going to want to go down to these countries and create their own citadels, essentially, right? And what does that mean? That means that money's leaving the United States, and that the United States probably doesn't want that to have all of this wealth like start moving into all these different countries. So I feel like we're in game theory now, where it's just like, okay, let's see where people are going to start shifting. Like you said, I've seen so many people say that they're considering moving to El Salvador. A lot of Bitcoiners saying that, and it's just like, you wouldn't have said that like 3 months ago. No one would have said that. But it's how Bitcoin starts to open these doors, these new opportunities. And these countries are a very fertile soil for the innovation and for new infrastructure and stuff, because they've been behind for a lot of years now. So to have all of these brilliant minds come together to make a better place out of these countries where they weren't even born in, just because they want to see the mission of Bitcoin thrive and want to see Bitcoiners thrive and just want to push for a better world, is absolutely beautiful. Like, I don't see any other group of people trying to do this.
Yeah, NFTs aren't really helpful.
That's like the first time I've heard the word in months. I feel like, yeah, those are passing trends, right? Like, and that's the thing about these other markets, that they're going to always try to do what's the trendy thing or what's the next thing. That's like the Silicon Valley type of mindset. When it comes to Bitcoin, it's not like that. And a lot of people were saying that they're worried that El Salvador is just going to be like a trend, that no one's going to really jump on it. But it's like, whoa, wait a second. This is actually an opportunity to build it and make it an example for the rest of Latin American countries, which is why so many people are coming together to start translating stuff from English to Spanish so that there can be better education. The new podcast that we're creating so that there can be education. Like, there's a lot of hard work and effort that's going behind this, to where it's like we're now making it our own personal mission, each and every Bitcoiner, to make sure that El Salvador wins. We don't want it to see it fail. We want to push as much as we can and have this become a movement, not just a trend.
Yeah, by the way, I would have moved down to El Salvador like 3 months ago. Mike Peterson um, invited me to go visit there, and I was super super excited about it. But my girlfriend is not very excited about that idea.
Maybe you can convince her. And people are starting to post pictures not only about how Bitcoin works and stuff, but also showing like the beautiful things that El Salvador has to offer. So I think it's just trying to communicate that I would love to go. I'm waiting for my passport and I have some upcoming trips, but I've had this conversation with my husband where it's just like, this is a moment in history. Like, we're making history right now. It would be so sad to miss seeing it in person when we had the opportunity to do so, right? So even if it's like just like a weekend getaway where you can just like go down there and see what's going on. um I don't know. You should tell your girlfriend it's like a mini vacation to a really awesome place with a lot of awesome people.
Yeah, I think she likes the idea of vacation a lot better than an actual move. So maybe that would be a good place to start. But yeah, and there's something that's so exciting, about that, of seeing people that are really hungry for better money. In the United States, we have so much financial privilege. Alex Gladstein did that amazing article on it. Um, and I talked to my friends about like why we need to end the Fed and why we need decentralized money and why we need hard money, and the problems with like coercion and legal tender laws and being forced to use this like piece of garbage currency. And they're like, yeah, well, I'm gonna go buy Dogecoin, or I'm gonna go put my money into AMC stock. I don't really care about that. And it just like, why am I? Sometimes I just have this feeling of like, why waste time when you can go to places where people truly want to be liberated, and step into the, the future of this amazing currency.
And I think that's also why I love Twitter so much, because you have all these conversations going on 24/7 about the same message. It's people that really care about this, that have a vision not only for themselves, but for humanity as a whole. Like, obviously we're going to benefit from it in terms of just being selfish. Like, yeah, number go up, that's really cool. But the conversation has really shifted to, we don't even talk about number go up anymore. Like, yes, that's important, but that's not the conversation anymore. The conversation is more about how can we spread this to the 8 billion people in this world. And those conversations just like fill your heart, your soul and your heart, because there's nothing better than working towards something that you truly believe in, that it's going to be good for humanity as a whole, but having a whole army of people behind you that stand with you on that same mission, it just like, it gives me chills to think about it. There's nothing worse than feeling like you're alone, right? When you talk to friends like that, or people that don't get it and they're like, dismiss it, or they think that you're kind of crazy or in a cult or whatever, and that kind of hurts. It's just like, oh, like, no, I'm not. If only you guys could see this amazing world that we're living in, and that you can also be part of it. That's the beauty of it. Anyone can join this movement. It's just, I think people need to start caring about other people, and that's what will really make them stay in Bitcoin for other reasons than just number go up.
Yeah, I mean, this is a thing. I used to be somewhat of a lefty, with the idea of like thinking like we need to, like, I'd love my tax dollars to go to these social programs and stuff like that. And Bitcoin really helped me get out of that. I was studying social work a few years ago when I went down the big Bitcoin rabbit hole, and but I think like something that is missing from like a lot of conversations, like, or, well, at least like with the political labels that are put on people, there's this idea that if you're a libertarian or libertarian minded person, if you're a freedom oriented person, if you're a capitalist, it's about selfishness and not caring about people. And I think that's so false. Um, and I believe in these things because I do care about people. Like, I just see that the more government control and like we were talking about, these governments are corrupt and they make it prohibitively difficult for people to help themselves, with business, creating businesses and creating wealth. They steal from us, and that's what these taxes are. And there's something, yeah, so it's just, Yeah, I love it. I love what you're saying. I agree 100%.
Yeah, of course. It's about giving people their power back, their freedom back. And you know what's crazy is that even before all of this, you start thinking, like, oh, how can I make an impact in this world, right? Like, I'm just like such a tiny person in the whole grand scheme of things. I really don't have influence. I really don't have power. And then that's also how you kind of just conform and get stuck in the rat race. Like, you know what? I'm just gonna get whatever job that's gonna get me by, that's gonna pay the bills, whatever. Like, there's a lot of people with that mentality nowadays. But then you start to realize with this movement, because that's what it is, like you do have a lot of power. You have a voice that you can share. You can connect with people from all over the world because we have the internet now. I've never been more grateful about the internet than after Bitcoin, after seeing like the potential that it has, right? And when you start to realize these things, that all you have to do in order to be part of this movement is plant a little seed somewhere. And by planting a little seed, it can be talking to someone about Bitcoin. It can be posting about it on social media. It can be doing an awesome podcast where a lot of people can listen to these conversations and kind of get an idea of what Bitcoin really is, that it's not just about number go up. Like any talent that you have and you kind of spin it around Bitcoin and you put it out to the world, that's a seed that you're putting and planting, and as long as you nourish it, it's going to grow. And we may not be alive to see all the fruits of the labor that we've done. We I don't feel like we're able to understand how much of an impact we can make with what we're doing right now. And a lot of people get scared because they're like, I don't know enough about Bitcoin to talk about it, or I just got in the community, I'm a noob, whatever. It doesn't matter. Even if you're just documenting your journey on Bitcoin, which is what I started to do, it's only been 7 months for me. Like if you start documenting your journey and people start to see those stories, they're going to connect with those stories. Because, like you said, we're humans. When you start to see someone for the human that they are, and that you see that they have emotions, they have feelings, they have a brain where they can think for themselves. Once we start realizing that and having that connection, that makes more of an impact than anything else, or any campaign or any advertisement that can be thrown out there for anything. So we're very powerful people. I don't think we've just realized the potential that we have. And El Salvador is just proof of that. Like we're changing the world. And the people that have been putting the work in El Salvador have proven that to us, that hey, it can start with a very small community just teaching about Bitcoin until it becomes a whole city that's in Bitcoin, until it becomes a whole country that's talking about Bitcoin. Like this is huge, and we need to take advantage of this momentum and just keep going no matter what.
Yeah, and I think this is why Bitcoin meetups are so important. And then as well as like, just um, a lot of people don't see the importance of like investing in their local communities and circles of people that, or at least, underestimate the importance of it, because we see so many people so wrapped up in the national, conversation, with politics and all this BS. Where we really do have power, is with our friends, and our families to create change. And I think like addressing things more locally instead of focusing on things that we don't have control over is, incredibly important. But yeah, the internet is interesting because it gives us such a louder voice than ever before, um, which is fun. It's really fun.
Absolutely. And the thing is, we're fighting against these people that have very loud voices that are against Bitcoin, right? Like it goes both ways. There's the people that are no coiners, just super sour about Bitcoin. But then you have us kind of like pushing back all the time, and it's important. Even if you don't have a gazillion followers, any tweet that you put out there that's defending Bitcoin, it's being documented on the internet, and anybody will be able to find it. So that's why we have to be louder than ever and louder than those voices, because they spread so much misinformation, that can delay the whole Bitcoin adoption. So I think about it as kind of like a battleground. We're little soldiers that are out there, defending what Bitcoin is and pushing it forward, well, we are going to have attacks coming from every single angle. And it's up to us to be able to educate yourselves and just fight it as much as we can, and prove to the world that what they're saying isn't true, and that Bitcoin is here to benefit absolutely everyone. That's the message that we have to send.
Yeah, it's crazy. And what's funny about these fudsters is they're not really doing a whole lot of favors for themselves with their arguments. But I mean, I saw a stat recently that 17% of Americans own Bitcoin, and I think that's crazy.
Oh my, how much? 70?
17.
Oh, 17. Man, if it was 70, we're going to get there someday. But yeah, and that's the thing. We're still so early. A lot of people think, oh, I missed the boat. Like, oh, I could have bought 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And it's like, Bitcoin is on sale right now. We're still super early. We still have a lot of work to do. So it's better to join sooner than later so that we can all get to the goals that we want to reach together. And don't look at the price. Just start thinking about Bitcoin. One Bitcoin will always equal one Bitcoin. No one can take it away from you if you know how to self-custody. It's not in the hands of the government where they can manipulate it however they want, and they can continue stealing from us. Like, it's such a valuable asset based on math that no one can mess with. And that's the beauty of it. That's why a lot people need it more than ever. I feel like people trust in the government too much nowadays also. They just feel like all of the responsibility is on them to make us happy and to make us, thrive or whatever. But that's not the case. Bitcoin teaches you that it's about self-responsibility, learning about yourself, learning about money, and learning how you can make the world a better place. Don't wait for anyone or the government. Don't trust anyone. Don't trust. Just verify that what you're doing is working for you, and it's working towards your movement.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, you got into Bitcoin full steam ahead. You said it's about 7 months ago. So what was the orange pill moment for you?
So my husband, um, we got married in July and we moved in together August. I had no idea my husband had been orange pilled and had been orange pilled for quite some months now. It was with everything that started with the pandemic that kind of got him down the rabbit hole. And he says that it was also people on Twitter, gold bugs, arguing with Bitcoin that grabbed his attention. And he was like, okay, let me find out about this. It turns out that he would wake up, start listening to podcasts, start listening to Citizen Bitcoin, start listening to Marty Bent and Matt Waddell, and it kind of went over my head. I didn't really understand it, and to be honest, I just thought it was going to be way too complicated for me to understand. Like, I definitely kind of just told myself, like, hey, let him learn, and eventually you'll catch on, whatever. We had Thanksgiving dinner with his family, and he was trying to orange pill his dad. And just seeing how well he answered his dad's questions about Bitcoin and stuff, like the whole time he thought he was orange pilling his parents, but he orange pilled me. And I just stayed quiet the whole time listening to the back and forth, and I was just really impressed. And then I read the Bitcoin Standard, and that was it for me. I was just like, this is crazy. How had I never asked myself about what money was, or, how everything runs and the history of money. And it was just like the aha moment for me. And then seeing that Bitcoin, being that there's only 21 million, I just made it a personal mission with my husband, like, well, now we have to acquire as much as we can, because this is not only going to be for us, but if we plan on having a family in the future, this is really going to help. And being millennials, right? We're like in the worst position. Like, if Bitcoin didn't exist, I feel like we would be in the most depressing position ever, because houses are starting to go up, salaries are not going up. Like, the older generations literally took our lunch, to where if we wanted to build a future, it will definitely have to take a lot more time or a lot more debt. in order for us to accomplish it. So this kind of like gave me hope in a personal sense as well, and why I absolutely love Bitcoin, because it's like, okay, they took our lunch, but now I'm going to take it back. And now I can silent protest by buying Bitcoin and just getting out of that fiat system. So, and from the get go, I also understood that I know there's other things that exist, but I'm only going to focus on Bitcoin because I want to put all of my energy and effort into studying this and trying to understand it. And the more that I did, the more I realized that the other projects didn't make sense for me to go down that rabbit hole. And time is so valuable. Like that's the one thing that's more scarce than Bitcoin is our own personal time. That I just told myself, hey, this is scarce. Just be disciplined. I fell in love with Bitcoin, and I feel like I'm a really faithful person as well. So I feel like I'm just faithful to this movement, and there's nothing that can rattle me from it.
That's awesome. Yeah, one of the things you kind of alluded to is this idea of like generational conflict between, older generations and younger generations in regards to, the decisions that they have made with monetary policy. I mean, the way I look at it is like if I ran up like 40 grand on credit cards and I just handed it to my parents, it was like, here you go. It's your debt to deal with now. They probably wouldn't be very happy. Um, so, part of me, I'm kind of split on this. Part of me, feels like justified to be resentful at the boomers, for what they, allowed for our generation to just get totally screwed. And then part of me at the same time feels like, we're all in the same boat together, and they're also victims of this fiat system, because as they were fed a bunch of lies and it wasn't as blatant, obvious as it is today. Um, so, I think I probably need to work through that on my end.
Yeah, honestly, I really appreciate that view, and I think you're absolutely right. Like, I don't think they realize they are not very low time preference and don't think of the consequences in the future. And you always want to give them like benefit of the doubt that they didn't want to do this intentionally. Um, let's hope, right? But now you see boomers also buying Bitcoin and stuff because they realize that, oh crap, like things are not going well for us either. And it's super crucial for them to realize this sooner than later, because think about all of the work that they've put on for years, and to see it evaporate now as quickly because they're deciding to print more money and stuff, that would be completely terrifying for me. And I would like to think that they're not only working for themselves as well, but they decided to build a family and a future and just like help establish a solid foundation for the generations to come, right? So I absolutely agree with that. We are all in the same boat. Humanity is all in the same boat, like it doesn't matter if we're living now or for future generations. Like we just have to do something now. Like this is the true emergency, right? Like I know there's like climate change, et cetera, but we have to fix our money in order to actually help with these other issues, because if we try to tackle these issues with fiat money and fiat policies, we're not going to get anywhere, and it's just going to become a political game of who sounds the smartest or who's actually going to save the earth when they're really not going to do anything, these people in power. So we just need to take that power back.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely like on the topic climate change. I really care about the environment, and I wouldn't call myself an environmentalist necessarily, but climate change, like, why aren't all these elites selling their beachfront property? If what they're saying is true, what we're seeing more of is like we see all these like the corruption of. I think a good term for it is fiat food. You've got all these unhealthy foods that are um, subsidized. You've got these awful pesticides, which are totally, destroying the environment and poisoning people. You've got, GMOs, which are totally messing things up. And even that's an exploitation of the farmers, because they sell them these GMO seeds, that don't produce seeds. So they have to continuously buy it. And it's just it's garbage. And I think like my realization around this, I've spent a couple months in Peru, and when I was down there, they don't have all the GMOs and BS in their food.
Yeah.
And my skin was so clear and I felt so good.
Oh my
And it
gosh,
was
yeah. I love Peru. I've actually been to Peru before, and their food is so fresh. Um, and the people are awesome as well, but you're absolutely right. It's like when you compare some other countries to what's going on in the USA right now, it's like we're literally killing each other. We're killing each other. Like there's no other way of putting it with the food system, the propaganda that they start to feed us. Like it's all propaganda and people trust it. Like that's the problem. People don't take a step back to actually think about what's going on, do their own research. And like I said earlier, like they just trust that the government is doing the best. And it's like, no, they're not. And we have so many studies and talk about it, about how what they've been doing, it's not right. You know, you see the people that are in power, they're probably not the healthiest either, you know, like they're not following these guidelines that are supposed to make Americans be a lot healthier and stuff. Just by attacking your own citizens' health, that says a lot. Like, what else are you going to care about? You know, if you don't care about your own people, why would you want to care about anything else? So that's really the sad reality that they don't care. And that's why you have to take a step back, see what's going on, and see how you can make your life better. Take that responsibility back because it's possible. Like if one person is able to do it, other people are able to do it. You just have to figure it out on your own and see what works for you.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, just like off the Bitcoin energy conversation, because this is one that comes up. My sister asked me about this because one of her professors at school mentioned it to her. And, like if this really is an emergency, like they say it is, we need to be going after things that aren't like necessary. Like Christmas lights use a ton of electricity and they're completely worthless. They provide no utility to society whatsoever. I mean, they're fun, whatever. I live in the desert. We have a ton of grass out here that's artificially planted, uses up all the water. That's not really necessary in a lot of extent. Golf courses, in the desert. There's just like millions of things that we could go after, that are important. Like we could be focusing on like airlines, and they're never targeted,
Or the private
and
jets of people up on top that are like climate change, and it's like really you're taking private jets and there's pictures of you doing it. Like you're not aligned with your message. You're just trying to brainwash a whole bunch of people so that you sound really pretty on paper and they vote for you. That's the
it's
reality of it.
it's all an agenda, and it's not an agenda that benefits normal people. And I think that's the thing that's incredibly important for people to understand. So it's
Absolutely.
just
And if we could take it down like up a notch, is like central banks. It's like let's start attacking the energy use of these central banks and entities and stuff, because I feel like with technology nowadays we can be a lot more efficient and actually save a lot of energy and stuff. But you have these big guys that just don't want to give up power. And it all just comes to selfishness, power, ego, that are all with this smaller group of people that are literally affecting everyone in the world. And that's the real pyramid scheme right there.
yeah, I mean, there's always going to be selfishness, attempts to attain power, unfairly, and massive egos, every single monetary system there is. But when you look at the fiat system and how it's different than like a hard money system, they can do it so much less expensively. Because like if you look at hard money, you're incentivized to produce value and be competitive. You can't just like be a zombie company continuously getting loans and giving multi-million-dollar bonuses to your executives while filing bankruptcy, like Hertz did. Um, and it's not about efficiency. It's not about competitive natures. It's not about creating more sustainability. And I think this is um, just insane when we talk about like the mainstream conversations around economics and politics. It's just it's so silly. Like we're gonna have a bunch of people flying around on private jets leading the charge around regulations due to climate. And what are they going to do? They're going to put a carbon tax on driving. That's what they're floating and talking about. And who does that impact? It impacts all those people that are having to work second and third jobs doing like Uber, stuff like that to provide food for their families, and their kids, and to pay their rent. And it's just insane.
It's a system built on lies. And unfortunately, that's the reality of it. But the hopeful part of it all is that it's going to crumble in the end. Anything that's built on lies, and this is just like a rule of life, I guess, anything built on lies is going to crumble sooner than later. And I think it's happening right now, especially with Bitcoin coming in the playing field with this hard money where, like you said, you're incentivized to provide value. All these people are incentivized to do is provide lies that will get them further down the line. So, and this is the important thing. It's like people that are going to be listening to this that are on the fence about Bitcoin, it's like, what system do you really want to belong in? Do you want to belong in this system that continues to feed lies to people, that it's literally killing people? Or do you want to go into the other side of Bitcoin, of hard money, where we're literally fighting for a better world? It just comes down to that. We're the ones that are worried about climate change. We're the ones worried about helping the poor people. We're the ones that are fighting for all of these freedom rights that everyone deserves in the world, no matter where you are. So it just comes down to people realizing or being brave enough to face the reality, and the reality that it was hard for me. It was hard for me when I read the Bitcoin Standard and going down that rabbit hole to see, wow, I was living a lie my whole life. I've felt pretty selfish throughout all of this. I'm contributing to these lies even more. But when you have this alternative, this option that's so much better, like how can you not jump into that and actually attempt, in your lifetime to just build something better for yourself, for your family, and for someone random in Africa, let's say, that it's like, when could I have ever done that? Like never. It would have been impossible.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Bitcoin Standard. Were you a big fan of modern art or something?
I'm sorry.
Were you a big fan of modern art before reading the Bitcoin Standard?
No, but it's definitely taking me down a different rabbit hole for sure. And just appreciate things that are more low time preference. I think that was also like a huge lesson. Like, don't be faced by the flashy and stuff that just passes real quick. Just focus on building and having the patience. And I mean, I had the patience with my story, right? With becoming an immigrant, waiting 10 years to be able to travel back to my country. Like that taught me a very huge lesson. And that's something that I can apply to anything in life right now. Like having that low time preference, working on it, and being able to have, that you're going to get something out of it and that is totally going to be worth it. And that's the way to live life, really. I feel like that's a huge lesson. I had no idea the term low time preference existed or high time preference existed before that book. So it definitely just changes you as a person completely.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important points of that book is talking about how money influences time preference. For me as well, that was the moment where I got it. Like I just remember like watching people act like zombies on Black Friday, and just being baffled about like, why is this happening? Why do people have so much credit card debt, and why don't people have savings? And then being able to finally connect that to money, the way it works, was just, it blew my mind.
Yeah, and it's realizing that people that live a high time preference life aren't necessarily happy people. What they actually do is just get like that dopamine hit that kind of like gets them on that high, but they come down from it again. Whereas in low time preference, I feel like you truly can be happy, even if it's like really hard work, and patience, it's a virtue, like it's hard. Low time preference is a hard way to live, but you truly get that genuine happiness seeing what the outcome's going to be from having that patience. You're not going to be in debt, right? You're not trying to show off to anybody. You just become a truer version of yourself. And so it's important to relay that message that if you really want to be happy, high time preference is not going to do it for you. It's going to be like a drug where you're just going to have to do more high time preference things to try to live up to those expectations. But low time preference is where it is. And we're all going to die someday, right? It's important to just look back and see, like, was I really happy with what I built in this life? Like, was it all worth it? And I think low time preference is the only way you really can have that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think people be thinking too much about their Instagram likes on their deathbeds.
Yeah. No. Or yeah, definitely not. Especially since that world is fake. It's such a high time preference world.
Yeah. Yeah, so it took you 7 years to get legal residency in the United States, and then or am I misquoted? Was it 10 years?
10 years, yeah.
Okay, and then I think it was another additional 7 to get citizenship. Is that correct?
Yeah, about 6 to 7, yeah.
So what was that process like in deal once you were able to get that citizenship?
Oh, honestly, I felt good. Like between the residency and my citizenship, it felt really good because, you have like all this weight lifted off your shoulder because you're not undocumented anymore, right? Like you still have rights, maybe not all the rights of like an American citizen, but you still have rights. And you can now call this your home officially, right? Without having to hide or run from the police or anything like that, right? But the process of becoming a resident to a citizen, um, I felt like I was more than ready for it, especially since the process of like you have to learn all of these 100 questions about the United States of America and what it stands for, and like go to this interview and you have to actually pass the exam. It just made me realize, like I said, I'm in love with this country and what it stands for. Like, I truly believe the United States stands for freedom. It's just sad that nowadays that's not what it really is. But you just come to really appreciate the whole journey of coming from somewhere else, then coming here, learning the language, learning the customs, the people. Like Thanksgiving doesn't happen in Colombia. That's like an American thing, just learning how to appreciate everything that this country has to offer. And then finally passing that test, it was just like you just want to cry. It's a huge accomplishment because there's so many sacrifices behind it. Like not being able to see my family for 10 years. My grandpa died in Colombia and I couldn't go to his funeral because if we went, we wouldn't be able to come back for another 10 years, like stuff like that, that they're battle scars, but they make you stronger. So honestly, I'm really happy to be an American citizen and to have had that journey. And if I had to do it again, I totally would. Like without a doubt. Because without it, I wouldn't be who I am right now. And maybe I wouldn't have heard about Bitcoin for a really long time, which is like a scary thing to think about. But it's all part of the story. So that's what we need. We need freedom. That's exactly what I felt when I got my citizenship. Even though some people may say that, well, you're not as free anymore, right? It's just fighting for that feeling again. And not only for people that are immigrants, but for people that were also born here. We're all looking for the same thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love hearing stories like that, and it's just so exciting to see people like really value what this country is, and the ideas that we've experimented with here, with the Bill of Rights and with freedom, that is relatively new in human history.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah, it's absolutely incredible. Where are some good places people can follow your work?
So people can follow me on Twitter. I kind of broke up with Instagram and chose Twitter after going down the rabbit hole. So you can find me at Camila Campton. Just put in my full name and you'll find me there. And for Spanish speakers, or if you want to get people, your friends that speak Spanish, start teaching them about Bitcoin, you guys can follow me on the Swan channel at YouTube/Swan Signal Live, where Javier and I are going to be doing our Spanish shows every Monday. So yeah, we're just excited to see the community grow, and it's always good to feel that you can contribute in any way that you can.
Awesome. Yeah. Make sure to like all of our videos on there too.
Yeah, thanks. Those are the videos that I just started just for laughs and giggles. Didn't think anything of them, but people really enjoyed them. And as long as you can connect with people, I'll do whatever it takes.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this is really fun. Thanks for coming on, Camila.
Thank you for having me, Alex. This is great.
Man, a lot to take away from that conversation. That was a lot of fun with Camila. Make sure to go follow her on Twitter. She's always posting, some great content. And check out the show Bitcoin in Espanol if you're a Spanish speaker. If you're not like me, you can just shill it. Tell your Spanish speaking friends. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about what they're doing over there at Swan. With all their content that they're creating and just getting Bitcoin, minting Bitcoiners rather than just getting people to buy Bitcoin. There's a big difference there. People that are freedom oriented rather than just opportunistic. And I love that about Swan. But yeah, we got some meetups coming up in Arizona. We had a meetup on Saturday. That was a lot of fun. And we have a meetup coming up this next Wednesday in Phoenix. And Kelly Lannon will be doing a presentation, most likely on Bitcoin urbanism. And I'm pretty stoked about that. So hope to see you there. Get to your Bitcoin meetups. If you don't have one in your area, feel free to reach out to me or Stephen Cole and on Twitter, and we can give you some tips into starting it. But yeah, the community aspect is super, super important. We're looking at expanding to more and more events, more casual events, as well as more structured presentations where people can really come and learn. And the energy is crazy. I'm also talking with Santos about potentially starting a Bitcoin gaming meetup somewhere in Arizona. And if you're interested in that, if you've been playing CSGO and earning sats or anything with Sabadi or the other guys that are creating Bitcoin games, let me know that you're interested and we could work something out. Pretty stoked. Have a good one.